My mother ignored me my entire life and sold the apartment my father gave me, but when I sued her for fraud, she never expected to end up in prison and lose everything for my half-brother. I'm 29 years old. I work in digital marketing, and honestly, I need to tell this story because I still can't believe my own mother did what she did. I mean, when people ask me why I don't talk to my mom, I don't even know where to start, you know? Because it's not just one thing. It's like a whole lifetime of being invisible to her. And then what happened with my dad's apartment was just the straw that broke the camel's back. I guess I should start at the beginning. When my parents got divorced, I was 8 years old. I don't remember exactly all the details because I was little, but I do remember the fights, the screaming, and eventually, my mom saying that I would stay with her because my dad traveled a lot for work. At the time, I thought it was normal. Like, that's how divorces go, right? Kids stay with mom and see dad on weekends or something like that. The first few years after the divorce weren't that terrible, to be honest. Margaret, my mom, was like 40 years old back then, worked in an administrative office, and things were, let's say, normal. We'd go to the supermarket together. She'd help me with homework sometimes. We'd watch movies on Sundays. Nothing special, but not bad either. My dad, Charles, would visit me when he could. And even though it wasn't as often as I would have wanted, every time he came, he'd bring me gifts and take me out for ice cream and make me feel like I was the most important thing in the world. But everything changed when my mom met Brian. I was like 10 or 11 years old, I think, and suddenly there was this guy in the house all the time. Brian is a contractor, has his own construction company, and at that time, he was like 45 years old. He was nice to me at first, asked me about school, tried to make bad jokes, you know, trying to win me over. I didn't hate him or anything, but I wasn't exactly excited about having a stepfather or however I was supposed to see him. And then, Lucas was born. My mom was 43 when she had him, and basically in the moment that baby came into the house, I stopped existing to her. It's not that she was cruel or abusive to me. She didn't hit me or anything like that, but it was like I had become invisible. You know what I mean? Everything was Lucas this, Lucas that. We have to be quiet because Lucas is sleeping. We can't go to that place because Lucas is too small. And I understand that babies need attention. Obviously. But what hurt me was that my mom didn't even try to hide that I didn't matter to her anymore. She could go days without asking me how school went, forgot to pack my lunch. Once she even forgot my 13th birthday, because she was too busy organizing Lucas's first birthday party. When I say she forgot my birthday, I mean the entire day went by without her mentioning it. And when I said something that night, she just said, "Oh yeah, sorry, I was just really busy. We'll celebrate it this weekend." Spoiler, we never celebrated it. And things got worse when I hit my teenage years. I was like 15 or 16 years old, and the relationship with my mom was basically non-existent. She worked, took care of Lucas, spent time with Brian, and I was just the girl who lived in the room at the end of the hall. My dad at that point was my favorite person in the world. He'd come pick me up every 2 weeks and we'd go to his place for the weekend, and those were the only moments when I felt like someone actually saw me. Charles, my dad, was like 55 years old back then and worked as an engineer, made good money, and he'd always tell me that when I turned 18, he was going to help me get my own place so I could be independent and not have to depend on my mom. That gave me hope, you know? In the idea that someday I could get out of that house where nobody wanted me. But what really changed everything happened when I was 17 years old. It was a Friday afternoon. I was supposed to be at a friend's house, but she got sick at the last minute, so I came home early. Lucas was at a friend's house. Brian was working. And when I walked into the house, I heard weird noises upstairs. Like, I knew exactly what those noises were, but my brain didn't want to process it, you know? I went up the stairs super slowly, and the door to my mom's room was half open. And there she was. Margaret, my own mother, with a guy who was definitely not Brian. It wasn't just that I saw them together. It's that the way they were acting made it super clear this wasn't the first time that they'd been doing this for a while. I just stood there like an idiot for what was probably only a few seconds but felt like an hour, until my mom saw me. The expression on her face, I swear, it wasn't shame or regret. It was more like annoyance, like I had ruined her moment. I ran downstairs, grabbed my backpack, and left the house without saying anything. I called my dad and told him I needed him to come get me immediately, and he heard something in my voice because he just said, "Give me 20 minutes." I didn't tell him exactly what I had happened at that moment. I just told him I needed to get out of that house now. My mom called me like 50 times that night, sent me text messages saying we needed to talk, that I didn't understand the situation, that things with Brian were complicated. And I was thinking, really? That's your defense? That things are complicated, so it's okay for you to cheat on your husband? On the guy who's given you everything? Who helped raise your daughter who isn't even his? I was so furious I couldn't even see straight. Literally felt like my chest was going to explode. The next day, I went with my dad to pick up all my stuff. Brian was there, Lucas too, and my mom had that victim face she knew how to do so well. Brian had no idea what had happened. My mom clearly hadn't told him anything, and I wasn't going to tell him right then because it wasn't my responsibility to clean up her mess. I just grabbed my clothes, my books, my laptop, some photos I had from when I was little with my dad, and left. My mom tried to stop me at the door, saying, "Amanda, please, don't leave like this. We can fix this." But I just looked at her and said, "There's nothing to fix. I don't want to be here anymore." And I left. Just like that. Living with my dad was like breathing for the first time in years. His house wasn't huge or fancy, but it was peaceful. And he really cared about me. He'd ask me how school went, we'd cook together on weekends, watch TV shows at night. It was everything I had wanted to have with my mom, but she never gave me. And the best part was when I turned 18 and my dad told me he had a surprise for me. He took me to see an apartment. It wasn't very big, like a studio with a small kitchen and a bathroom. But it was in a decent area of the city, and he said, "It's yours." I already signed the papers. I couldn't believe it. Like, I literally started crying right there because nobody had ever done something so important for me. The only weird thing was that on the papers, my mom's name appeared too, and my dad explained to me that because of custody laws, and because technically I was still a minor, when the process started, he had started the paperwork a few months before I turned 18, he had to put her name, but that legally the apartment was mine, and eventually, when everything was processed correctly, only my name would be on it. That apartment was my salvation. Seriously. I rented it to a tenant because I was still studying and living with my dad, but the extra money helped me pay for college and some expenses. My mom tried to contact me several times after I left, but I ignored her most of the time. Brian didn't know anything about her affair. I never told him because, honestly, it wasn't my problem, and I didn't want more drama in my life either. Lucas would message me occasionally, asking why I didn't visit them anymore, and I'd just tell him I was very busy with school, because what was I going to tell a 10-year-old kid? That his mom is a liar and a cheater? Everything changed when my dad got sick. I was 23 years old, had just gotten my first real job after graduating, and my dad started having weird symptoms. He lost a lot of weight really fast, was always tired, everything hurt. The doctors ran tests and eventually diagnosed cancer, and not the kind that can be easily cured, but the aggressive type that was already advanced when they found it. The next few months were a nightmare, between chemo and treatments and hospitals, and I was with him as much as I could, trying to stay strong for him but dying inside every time I saw him getting weaker. My mom found out he was sick. I don't know how. Probably someone told her, and she had the nerve to show up at the hospital one day. My dad, who was too good for this world, let her stay for a while. But I left the room because I couldn't be near her without wanting to scream at her. My dad died when he was 58 years old, and I was devastated. He was the only person who had really loved me. Unconditionally, the only one who never made me feel like a burden or an inconvenience. The funeral was horrible. I had to see my mom there acting like she cared, crying and hugging people, and I just wanted her to leave. After the funeral, my dad's lawyer contacted me to talk about his estate, and it turned out he had left everything organized, so I would be the sole owner of the apartment. Officially, now that he was gone, my mom's name was removed from the papers and everything was left only in my name. It was the only thing I had left of him, besides the memories, and it meant everything to me. The next few years passed relatively quietly. I kept working. The apartment tenant was responsible and always paid on time, and I basically had no contact with my mom except for the occasional text message at Christmas or my birthday that I ignored half the time. Lucas had grown up, was already in college, and occasionally he'd message me asking how I was, and I'd respond because none of this was his fault. But like a year ago, Everything went to hell in the worst way possible. My mom called me, which she hadn't done in years, and told me she needed to talk to me about something important. I hesitated to answer, but eventually I did, and she started with this story about how Lucas was in college but things were really difficult financially, that he needed help with tuition, that she and Brian were going through tough times with the business, and then came what she really wanted. She asked me for money. Like, not a small amount. She was talking about thousands of dollars for Lucas's tuition, and I told her no, that I didn't have that money to give her just like that I had my own bills to pay. She got all dramatic saying I was her daughter, that family was supposed to help each other, and I literally laughed in her face because seriously? Her talking to me about family after ignoring me my whole life? I hung up on her and thought that was the end of it. But a few months later, my tenant called me super upset saying he had received an eviction notice, that the apartment had been sold and the new owner wanted him out in 30 days. I was completely confused because what the hell? I hadn't sold the apartment, hadn't even thought about selling it. I called the tenant to have him send me photos of the notice, and when I saw the legal document, there it was. The apartment had indeed been sold, and the signature on the papers was supposedly mine. Except I had never signed anything, had never been to any notary office, had never authorized any sale. My hands started shaking when I realized what had probably happened. But I didn't want to believe it, because who does something like that? Who forges their own daughter's signature to sell her property? I went straight to my mom's house, didn't even call first, just drove there with my blood boiling. Brian opened the door, looked surprised to see me because I never went there, and I said I need to talk to Margaret now. She came out of the kitchen with that face I knew so well, that expression of, I know you're upset, but I'm going to play the victim. And before she could say anything, I yelled at her, "Did you sell my apartment? Did you forge my signature and sell the apartment my dad gave me?" She tried to deny it at first, saying I didn't know what I was talking about. But when I showed her the papers my tenant had sent me, her face changed. And I swear this is what makes me angriest about everything. She told me she had done it for Lucas, that he needed the money for school, that she had the right to do what she did because her name had been on the original papers, that technically part of that apartment had been hers. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I yelled at her that she had no right, that my dad had put her name only as a legal technicality, that the apartment had always been mine, that she had committed fraud and forgery. Brian looked completely lost. Clearly didn't I know anything about this, and my mom kept going with her speech about how she was the mother, that I should understand. That family helps each other. And that's when something broke in me. You know? Like, I wasn't angry anymore. I just felt this horrible emptiness, and I told her, "You know what, Margaret? I don't have a mom anymore." And I left that house knowing I was never going back. The first thing I did was contact a lawyer. I explained the whole situation, showed him the documents, gave him proof that I had never been present at the sale, that my signature had been forged. The lawyer told me I had a very solid case, that what my mom had done was clearly fraud and could even lead to criminal charges. We started the legal process, filed all the necessary documents, and for months everything was a nightmare of courts and lawyers and paperwork. My mom hired her own lawyer and tried to argue that she had the right to sell because she had been a co-owner at some point, but the records clearly showed that her name had been removed years ago and that she had no legal authority over the property. They also brought in handwriting experts who confirmed that the signature on the sale documents wasn't mine, that it had been forged. The trial was surreal. Seeing my mom there, sitting with her lawyer, trying to justify what she had done, saying she just wanted to help her son, and that I had a stable job and didn't need the apartment. As much as Lucas needed the money for school, the judge didn't buy it at all. The evidence was too clear. It had been obvious fraud, signature forgery, illegal sale of property. The court ruled completely in my favor, declared the sale invalid, that the apartment was still legally mine, and the best part was that Margaret, my own mother, was found guilty of fraud and forgery. Not only that, but she was sentenced to prison time. I don't know exactly how many years because they're still processing some appeals details and stuff, but it's real prison time, not just a fine or community service. When I left court that day, I felt weird. You know? Not exactly happy, but not sad either. It was more like relief mixed with this deep tiredness, like I could finally breathe after holding my breath for years. But there was something else I needed to do. Something I had been keeping for a long time. I contacted Brian and asked him to meet me for coffee. He looked terrible. Obviously, the whole trial thing and knowing his wife was going to prison had hit him like a bomb. But when we sat down, I said, "There's something you need to know, something that happened many years ago." And I told him everything about what I saw when I was 17, about how my mom had been cheating on him, about the guy who was with her in their room. Brian's face fell apart, like he literally went pale, and for a moment I thought he was going to throw up or pass out. He asked me why I hadn't told him before, and I explained that at that time I was just a confused and angry teenager who just wanted to get out of that house, that it hadn't been my responsibility to fix their marriage. He stayed quiet for a long time, and then just nodded and said thank you for telling me. Brian filed for divorce like 2 weeks later. I don't know all the details of how that process is going, because honestly, I don't want to know anything about any of that anymore. But Lucas sent me a message saying his parents were getting divorced and everything was a mess. I told him I was really sorry, that I knew it was hard, and that if he ever needed to talk, I was there, but that there were adult things between his mom and me that he didn't need to know. He's 21 years old now, old enough to understand that things are complicated, and I hope that someday when he's more mature, he can see the whole situation and understand why I did what I did. The money from the fraudulent sale was eventually recovered through the legal process, and after paying the lawyer's fees and sorting out a whole mess with the tenant who had been affected by all this, I still had a decent amount left. I decided to sell the apartment for real this time, legally and on my own, because honestly I couldn't even look at it without remembering all this drama. With that money, I bought a small house on the outskirts of the city. Nothing fancy, but it's mine, completely mine, without anyone else's name on the papers, without memories of betrayals or fraud. It's a fresh start, I guess. People ask me if I'll ever forgive my mom, and honestly, I don't know what to tell them. Part of me feels sorry for her. Like, she's in prison and her life is ruined. Her marriage ended. Probably her relationship with Lucas is damaged too. But another part of me, the part that still remembers that one 3-year-old girl whose birthday was forgotten, the teenager who was ignored for years, the young adult who had the only thing she had left of her father stolen from her, that part feels nothing, just emptiness. Last week, Brian sent me a message asking how I was, saying that Lucas misses me, and that if I ever want to reconnect with my half-brother, he would support it. I thanked him and told him maybe someday, when things calm down, and all this mess is further behind us. For now I'm focusing on myself, on my work, on my new house, on building the life I want without all this toxicity. I don't know if that makes me a bad person or if I'm being selfish, but after everything that happened, I think I deserve it.